If part 1 unsettled you, then you're not ready for what comes next. Part 2 dives into stories so dark, so real, that most people wish they had never heard them. In 2013, Brianna Altis wasn't just an English teacher at Davis High School. She was one of its most trusted, admired, and respected educators. Nearly a decade of experience, a spotless image, a classroom full of students who looked up to her. But behind the scenes, Altis was crossing lines no teacher should ever cross. In October 2013, a 17-year-old student walked into a police station and told investigators that his teacher had been involved with him far beyond anything appropriate. He described details about her life and home that made his account impossible for detectives to ignore. When confronted, Altis admitted to violating boundaries with the student. But investigators quickly realized this wasn't an isolated incident. 2 more students came forward, both teenagers, both telling similar stories of secret meetings in cars, in parks, and at her home when no one else was around. The community was stunned. Parents were furious, and Davis High, once proud of her, now found itself at the center of a scandal. Altis was arrested, released on bail, ordered to stay away from students, and warned by the court not to repeat any misconduct. But instead of stopping, she continued the same behavior with one of the boys. Messages, communication, contact she was legally forbidden from having. Prosecutors were shocked. She had committed additional crimes while already facing felony charges. The school district later admitted it had seen early warning signs, unprofessional interactions, concerning photos, but no decisive action had been taken in time. By January 2015, investigators had more than enough evidence to ask the court to revoke her bail completely, and they did. In July 2015, Altis stood before the judge, tearful, apologizing, insisting she understood her mistakes. But the judge wasn't convinced. He said she continued to shift blame, continued to minimize her choices, and failed to understand the damage she'd caused. His ruling was final, up to 30 years in prison for 3 felony counts. A once trusted teacher, now remembered as the educator who shattered the trust of an entire community. Dr. George Tiller had spent decades living with the knowledge that someone, somewhere, wanted him dead. He wasn't just a physician. He was one of the most controversial doctors in America. By performing rare, 3rd trimester procedures that almost no one else in the country was willing to do, he became a lifeline for desperate families and a target for extremists who saw him as their enemy. His clinic in Wichita, Kansas, Women's Healthcare Services, was one of only 3 places in the entire United States where such procedures were performed. And from the moment word spread, the threats began. In 1986, a pipe bomb ripped through the clinic. Tiller responded by hammering a sign into the rubble that read, "Hell no, we won't go." A message to anyone watching. He wasn't running. In 1993, an extremist shot him in both arms while he sat in his car. The next day, still bandaged, he went back to work. By then, Tiller lived like a man under siege. He wore body armor. He moved with armed guards. His clinic was fortified with bulletproof glass. Federal marshals protected him for years. His daily commute was inside a Brinks armored truck, the same kind used to move millions of dollars in cash. Meanwhile, the harassment escalated. A major cable host, Bill O'Reilly, repeatedly targeted him on air, calling him Tiller the Baby Killer dozens of times, and comparing him to history's worst monsters. The rhetoric was loud and dangerous. Anonymous warnings reached the FBI. A man named Scott Roeder had been talking about harming Tiller. On May 31st, 2009, Roeder walked into Reformation Lutheran Church, where Tiller was serving as an usher, greeting people, handing out programs, trying to live a normal life despite everything. Roeder approached him in the foyer, raised a handgun, and fired at point-blank range. Tiller died instantly. Roeder fled but was captured within hours. And while he was condemned nationwide, a dark corner of extremist groups hailed him as a hero, a chilling reminder of how far ideological hatred can go. On May 17, 2017, the Fox Theater in Detroit became the stage for what no one knew would be Chris Cornell's final performance. For nearly 2 hours, the legendary Soundgarden frontman pushed through a show that felt off. Even fans who had seen him a dozen times could sense it. Cornell moved slowly, almost unsteady. During only the second song, his voice faltered, his energy drained. Entire verses slipped away as he stepped off stage mid-performance, leaving the band to play instrumental sections while the crowd filled in the lyrics he couldn't. But between those strange gaps, Cornell kept telling Detroit how much he loved them, over and over, as if trying to say something more. At one point, he told the audience, "I feel bad for the next city. You guys are unbeatable." It sounded heartfelt, but also like a goodbye. Around 11:30 p.m., Cornell returned to room 1136 at the MGM Grand Hotel. His bodyguard, Martin Kirsten, briefly stopped by to help him with a computer issue and to give him his prescribed Ativan for anxiety. Minutes later, Cornell's wife Vicky called him from Los Angeles. She noticed something strange. The lights in their house had been flickering, something Cornell could control remotely from his phone. But he denied doing it, insisting he hadn't touched anything. His speech was slow, thick, repeating the same phrase, "I'm just tired." When Vicky asked if he had taken extra medication, his tone shifted, agitated, dismissive, unlike himself. It reminded her of the darkest moments from his past struggles with addiction more than a decade earlier. Growing terrified, Vicky called Kirsten at 12:15 a.m., begging him to check on Chris. The door to the room was locked. Hotel security refused to open it, saying Kirsten wasn't an authorized guest. So he kicked it down. The bedroom door, also locked. Another forced entry. Inside the bathroom, Cornell was found on the floor, unresponsive. By 1:38 a.m., he was pronounced dead. The toxicology report later showed extremely high levels of Ativan, more than 4 times the prescribed dose, which experts said could drastically impair judgment, coordination, and behavior. For fans and loved ones, the shock never faded. The final performance, the strange comments, the mood shifts, all became puzzle pieces when a tragedy that felt sudden, haunting, and deeply human. On May 15, 1992, Chelino Sanchez walked onto the stage at the Salón Bugambilias in Culiacán, completely unaware that this performance would become the most haunting recording of his life. Halfway through singing Alma Enamorada, a man from the crowd stepped forward and handed him a folded piece of paper. The camera never looks away. Chelino opens it, and something in his expression instantly breaks. The color drains from his face. His jaw tightens. A thin line of sweat appears across his forehead. It's as if whatever he just read pulled the ground out from beneath him. To this day, nobody knows what the note said. It vanished when Chelino crushed it in his hand and let it fall to the floor. But the look in his eyes said enough. His wife would later argue that if it were a death threat, he wouldn't have finished the show. But the timing and what happened next tell a different story. After midnight, Chelino left the venue with his brothers and a small group of friends. Minutes later, 2 vehicles cut them off. Men inside, flashing what appeared to be official state police identification. They said their commander needed to speak with Chelino. Only him. Against the protests of the others, Chelino got into their vehicle and disappeared into the night. By sunrise, 2 farmers made a discovery near an irrigation canal off Highway 15. Chelino Sanchez was gone. No official arrests, no confirmed motive, no answers. All that remains is the footage. That chilling moment on stage where his smile fades, his eyes tighten, and the weight of the message in that note seems to hit him all at once. It is the final recorded moment of Chelino Sanchez alive. On February 27, 2015, at exactly 6 a.m., 18-year-old Dylan Monyepua walked out of his grandmother's house in Waianae. He told her he was going hiking. He didn't say where. But she already suspected the truth. Dylan had been fascinated for weeks by the Haiku Stairs, better known as the Stairway to Heaven, a forbidden trail with 3,922 metal steps climbing straight into the clouds above Oahu. Closed since 1987, deadly when wet, patrolled by security, and still one of Hawaii's most dangerous, irresistible climbs. Dylan boarded a bus toward the windward side of Oahu, wearing black surf shorts, a white long-sleeve shirt, and carrying a red backpack. At 11 a.m., he began sending photos to his family. Selfies on the trail, shots of the scenery, little updates meant to reassure them. But those photos would become the last trace of his existence. When family members looked closer later that night, they noticed something chilling. In one of the photos, a shot of dense vegetation, a figure is crouched in the bushes, half hidden, face partially visible above the branches, body concealed as if intentionally hiding, watching. Police took the image seriously enough to issue a public appeal asking the unknown man to come forward. No one ever did. Search teams combed the razor-thin ridgelines for days. Some hikers reported hearing screams echoing from the valley below. Desperate, panicked, human. Multiple 911 calls were made, but rescuers never located the source or Dylan. There was no backpack, no clothing, no remains, nothing. To this day, Dylan Manyepua is still missing, and the mysterious figure hidden in the bushes has never been identified. Some believe he fell. Others think the man in the photo wasn't a hiker at all. And the most unsettling theory? Dylan wasn't alone on that mountain, and whoever was watching him never wanted to be found. What happened on that mountain is still unanswered. But the truth is simple. Some places don't want you to leave, and some people don't want to be seen. Ready for the next one?